Your presence here today signifies your commitment to the transformation of our country from what it is now to what it could be if we all did the right things. I want to begin by calling our attention to Chapter 2 of the 1999 Nigerian Constitution. This chapter contains the fundamental objectives and directive principles of Nigerian state policy. I will only read the opening sentence of Section 13. It says, "It shall be the duty and responsibility of all organs of government and of all authorities and persons exercising legislative, executive, or judicial powers to conform to, observe, and apply the provisions of this chapter of this Constitution." These are very, very powerful and weighty mandates, fundamental actually to the principles that direct us either as citizens of this state called Nigeria or as officers of this state called Nigeria. Now, sections 13 to 24 of our Constitution make up Chapter 2. Now, what does Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution mandate? It's very similar to all other constitutions I have read of the 190-plus nations who have constitutions. It simply points out that the responsibility of men and women who have the privilege of governing the people of Nigeria is to deliver to them a decent standard of living. That's what Chapter 2 speaks about. That the reason why we are a nation state and we have collectively agreed to work together, live together, and die together as Nigerians, giving power, either executive, legislative, or judicial, to some to govern the state for all of us, is so that all of us residing in this state will have a decent life. Now, the United Nations has done an excellent job in defining what a decent standard of living means. The UNDP Human Development Index is a summary measure of the average achievement in key dimensions of human development of every nation in the world. All it says is that we will measure every nation along a few dimensions. It's not very complex. What are these dimensions? A long and healthy life, knowledge or education, and a decent standard of living. It is a standard means of measuring well-being. It is used to distinguish whether a country is a developed, developing, or underdeveloped country. And it's also used to measure the impact of economic policies on the quality of life. Countries fall into 4 broad categories based on their Human Development Index ranking or rating or score. The categories are very high, high, medium, and low human development. Currently, Seychelles is the only African country that falls into the very high human development category. Somalia has the lowest HDI in both Africa and the world, according to the list. For Nigeria, since 2003, our HDI value has actually improved by about 20%. Our value is currently 0.54. But this places us in a low human development category. And our ranking is currently 161 or thereabouts out of 189, 190 countries. Last night, I spent the night in Abuja. I live, I think it's called Imetama. Now, the place I live is very highbrow. but it's a compound of several apartments and so on. Very recently, when I visit Abuja, the complex doesn't have electricity. And I remember the last time I came here for a function, if you saw my agbada, you will know that I didn't have light. I didn't have time to recover. Last night, again, my wife and I spent the night without light. There's a problem with the generator, the generator doesn't have the capacity to take the place, etc. But I tell her that these experiences are things we must live. In other words, I have the option when I come to Abuja of sleeping elsewhere. But, if we don't actually spend days without light, we will not understand how those who have no access to this thing we have exist. And I can tell you that it's not the most pleasurable thing. And I begin to ask myself, if indeed it was my lot in life not to have the privilege or opportunity somehow to have access to power, would you actually be celebrating my professional and entrepreneurial success? Perhaps my dreams too, for a decent standard of living and a decent life, or beyond that, would never have been realized. But that's what the Constitution asks for every Nigerian. So, a friend of mine pointed out to me a newspaper headline. When we complain today about fuel availability and fuel queues, if you read the newspaper headlines of, I think, 1973, that's the headline. If you want to know whether we've been contending with power availability from 1999, that's not correct. At least for those of us who have late 50s and above, you know that it's something that we've been struggling with for several decades now. So, that ranking that we have today is not a ranking that reflects just the performance of government today. It's a ranking that reflects the performance of government over several decades of our reality. But why is it so? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is universally known, and I think it's important for us in Nigeria to acknowledge this, that everywhere in the world, it is known that an efficient and motivated public service is critical for the following things: governance, production and distribution of public goods, formulation and implementation of economic policy, and management of public expenditure. Ladies and gentlemen, however gifted a president is, however gifted the cabinet is, without A, B, C, and D present at a minimum level of efficiency and effectiveness, in other words, a functioning public service, no nation stands a chance of attaining even medium levels of human development. Simple. There's nothing you will do about it. This is why all nations in the world have a continuing focus on ensuring that their government works. This is the aim of government reform, to create a government workforce of the size and with the skills, and it doesn't end there, with the incentives, ethos, and accountability needed to provide quality public services and carry out the functions stated in Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution. This is what is holding us back. And you would agree that there's a correlation between the strength of a country's public sector and its strength as a nation. As a result, the most important objective of any nation in the 21st century is to have an effective and efficient public service. It is with this belief in mind that my wife Ofo and I founded the Aigboje Foundation. We are convinced that improved public services lead to better outcomes for our people, communities, and economies. As such, we work closely with government, closely with the private sector, with the academia, and development partners to try and transform public service delivery. Since our inception, we have achieved a number of milestones in our quest to transform public service delivery. We are building a critical mass of public sector leaders who are equipped with skills, knowledge, and tools to drive and sustain reforms. We aim to ensure that within the next 20 years, Nigeria regains its post-independence reputation for having one of the strongest public services in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a time, just post-independence, as a young man, I was in Paris for the opening of the Olympics. There was a time when the Nigerian contingent to the Olympics was spoken about with respect. You knew that when we came out for the Olympics, medals would be won. They would talk about, do you remember? Now, why do I go back to those times? Is it because we lack the talent today? Is it because we can no longer compete? No. All it takes for us to regain that position that is rightfully ours, the giant of Africa, prime place as a leader of Africa, is to go back to a strong public service. Technology has been our cornerstone in transforming public service delivery. We've provided technical support and funding for the digitization efforts of the Federal Civil Service. Through our support, the service has successfully digitized thousands of files, automated 300 processes, acquired hundreds of new digital devices. In addition, our collaboration with Microsoft, we are upskilling thousands of workers in the civil service. A key area of our support to the civil service is the Culture Change Program. To change the mindset of this key constituency, we provide communication training, culture change campaign videos, and ongoing assistance for the publication of official newsletters. We've helped to develop the Civil Service Culture Handbook, better than actually many of the culture handbooks I've seen in the private sector. But we must make it work. That outlines the values, behaviors, and practices that are essential for delivering the state's Chapter 2 mandate. A key element of our foundation's theory of change is to ensure that every Nigerian citizen takes ownership of the critical need to reform the public service. It is not their public service. It is your public service. It is our public service. And understand that as it strengthens, you strengthen as well. So we must join hands, come together, and make it work. This commitment brings us to the purpose of this gathering today, to discuss the topic, Rethinking Reforms, why many reforms fail in Nigeria and what we can do about it. Today, we will share with Nigerians our evidence-based research on this very subject to equip and give our citizens the knowledge needed to guide us as we transform Nigeria's public service. Understanding that public sector transformation cannot be achieved without the full support of citizens, civil society, and private sector entities. It is our hope that once finalized, this research will benefit all stakeholders alike. For the federal government and for our state governments, this research will serve as a playbook for the coordination, implementation, and ultimately sustainability of reform efforts. For private sector organizations, the research will serve as a guide for those of us who should, in our own self-interest, begin to play a much more prominent role in what the public sector does. As I bring my welcome address to a close, I humbly but strongly request that this conversation does not end here. And indeed, the Nigerian public sector reform project reboots here. Whether you're a policymaker, business leader, member of civil society, member of the academia, member of the political class, your role in the reform process is invaluable. It is through our collective and sustained commitment that we can truly transform public service delivery in our country. Once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this national workshop on public sector reforms. I look forward to a wonderful day ahead. Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.